I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Hi everyone, and welcome to Arcane Mark. We're doing Linda's Adventures Kingmaker Part 2. Bear with us as we are a little bit sick.
Speaking of which, well, thanks for the
subscription,
sub,
Sheppy. Thanks so much. And it is still September where subscriptions are half off, but we still get the full donation. And let's get into Kingmaker. So when we left you last time, it was at the end of 4710.
Yes, indeed.
AR. We had dealt with the trolls of Hargulka's army that Linda had built out, sort of into more of the Hargulka's Monster Kingdom idea.
Yes,
But
and that was the encounter with the 60 creatures at the same time.
We defeated 60 creatures ourselves because we refused to raise a militia. We were pacifists. We did recruit some NPCs, such as Thenui, the Queen of Silverstep, which I remember because she had a share that's mentioned in 4711 AR.
Yes.
And then that left us in a position where we were dealing with the aftermath of the trolls. And I don't know, I think Linda added some of this stuff into their hex, but she added some interesting things in their area.
Well, that was one of the things that Hargulka's Kingdom is one of, DMG Meister, I think, on the forums did a lot of work to expand that area very specifically. So I can't remember how much of this came from that and how much of this is stuff I came up with, but I know that it was super useful and recommend checking that out. But yeah, the idea that there were a bunch of dwarven ruins behind the Trolls Fort as well that they explored.
So, let's see. It says, in Abadius, Varn from Varnhold suggests trading steel for wood because he has a lot of steel. We had very little.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to engage the PCs with Varnhold prior to Part 3. Okay, Kingmaker spoilers, guys. This is super spoiler.
Yeah, this is spoilery for Kingmaker.
Okay, yeah. So, I definitely wanted to engage the PCs with Varnhold prior to the whole vanishing incident. And as we've mentioned before, offhand, that Varnhold never actually vanished in their version.
Wow. Author's Tale, thanks for
Author's Tale, you now gifted 40 subs. That's, wow.
You are super generous.
Author Santa.
Author Santa. Time for extra XP.
Speaking of which, is anybody getting XP today? Or is it still doing the weird thing?
I feel like every time we do it on Linda's computer,
I think we just have to do it manually.
We have to do it manually, and we will. So we will give you guys manual XP every so often.
Yep.
But first, there we go.
Oh man, you got over 10,000 XP there.
Alright. It looks like Author's Tale mentions that...
For subbing and for the well-wishes.
Warlord, yeah. Mentions that he wishes he'd gotten his group involved with Varnhold since it did feel a little odd. Yeah. At the beginning, Linda told us about all of the different groups that were being commissioned by the Sword Lords or others to go down there.
Yeah. And then the idea was that they could interact with them and they were encouraged to have... They were encouraged to meet their neighbors, and this trade deal was part of how I was starting to set things up, going into Part 3 with really trying to engage them a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Hey, welcome, Numbat. Glad to see you. So, we had this trade deal, and it looks like Thenui invested her share of the troll money in art.
Not everything I wrote on here is necessarily interesting to people.
But it could be. So, the next month was Calistrel.
Yeah, so that was the Dwarven Ruins, and that was also the your first Memorial Day flowers to Natala Sertova.
That's right.
To remind her that you know that she was responsible for killing your family.
To my family.
Yep.
So, to remind everyone from Part 1, Natala Sertova, the Cersei Lannister of Brevoy, had killed my character's family by hiring the Red Mantis to take them out because of the fact that they might have been in the way for the Sertovas to grab the Dragonscale throne. Also, it looks like our capital city had a period of unusual social and political calm thanks to the trolls being defeated.
My name is Inigo. Yes, indeed, Olar. Mm-hmm. It was just passive aggressive flowers for a while though. I mean,
yes, that's right.
when you're the ruler of a small kingdom that is about a year old, you probably don't necessarily want to be engaging.
Send
in
a letter
warfare.
that says, "Hello, my name is Edward Sangrev. You killed my family. Prepare to die."
Indeed. Let's see. Ferris. Oh, Perrin's whole family arrived. Yeah, no, that was totally. That was totally getting into the fact that.
So to remind everyone, Perrin, our marshal,
Yes.
was a dwarf. So our main characters, Edward, the bard, is the king. That's my character. Perrin, the dwarf marshal, druid of Erastil. We also had Lollipop, the elven wizard.
Sabathiel Lolandir was his actual name.
Yes.
People basically never
including
used
his own player. After I nicknamed him Lollipop. Big Al, or Albert the Lost, the fighter who is now training Owlbear the Lost, the baby owlbear. And he had a great sword that was not a nascent demon lord.
Totally not.
I'm sure it wouldn't become a problem for us later on.
Yep.
And then at this point,
So you had Tiali, your familiar.
yep,
I don't know if you had your cohort Rihanna yet.
maybe not.
And Lollipop had Ras
Ras
Lodara, the unpetrified ancient elf.
Magus, who used
Magus.
word casting.
Yes.
We also had, at this point, Alex probably was close or had switched out of Tristan into Xena.
Yeah.
The Callistrian cleric, who was about the same level as his Caden Carolian cleric.
And then there was the mysterious spy master Med.
That's right. Owlbear, says Ula, warlord.
Owlbear
Oh wait,
emoji.
there's an owlbear emoji. That's cool.
That's cute. I like that.
All right.
So Perrin the Dwarven Druid's family showed up in the city, and the player, Perrin's player, really seemed to enjoy playing with the idea that his character was kind of pushing back on some of the traditional values and expectations. He seemed to think that was really funny.
Even though he was Erastil, which is a family values deity, and his character cared a lot about family, but he didn't follow the same footsteps as his own family.
Yes.
Ironically, because as a druid and going outdoors, he did things with trees. His
his last name is Goldsniffer. He came from a long line of miners.
Admittedly, he did do one thing to help towards mines, which was that a lot of the mines that we found, instead of killing people, we would give them a term of labor in the mines. And Perrin would be the one who would check out those mines and send people to the mines. So, Perrin did get some mining done, but it certainly wasn't the way his family expected.
So I basically had because the player had never had his character send letters back to his family or go back and visit his family, and it had been about a year. I decided that his immediate family started uprooting and coming to the kingdom to basically, and his parents are and his younger sister was like, "Oh, this is so awesome! You're traveling and you're doing this, and I want to be just like you." And then his parents were like, "Stop being a bad influence on your sister. Come back home. What are you doing with all this plant wandering stuff?" Blah blah blah.
And also, he became immune to alcohol when he was immune to all poison.
Yeah, that was a plot point too. That he being immune to all poison meant that he was no longer capable of getting drunk, and then and then his family is like, "What are you even doing? You can't even enjoy a drink anymore. This is just a sign that this is unnatural."
So let's talk about the kobolds since they had a silver mine. Well, we actually just befriended the kobolds, and they just ran the silver mine because they wanted to.
Generally, the people they put in the mine were the people that I wouldn't say normal, but most PCs would kill.
Like Gyrona cultists, other than the High Priestess, who was just like, "Leave me alive for 1 minute, and I will murder your children, and I will feast upon them and send them to Gyrona."
It was basically like, "Are you a murderer? Okay, well, we don't really want to execute anybody, so go work in the mines."
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. They went to the mines where we also sent missionaries of good deities who tried to redeem them. And if we felt that they were redeemed, then they could get a suspended service.
Yeah, no, they were a good aligned group. That was
I feel like literally the only person we ever executed officially as a state was her. Although we certainly had that one time with Spriggans that's going to come up soon, but
Yes.
probably not be on the calendar, where we were traveling along on the road.
You were
And-
travelers on this road.
Yes, we're traveling on the road, and some Spriggans said, just saw us on the road, and were like, they looked like they were very threatening, so I tried to come out and roll diplomacy, and I was like, excuse me, we are travelers on this road. And the Spriggan said, you were travelers on this road, and then attacked immediately. And by which I mean, the Wizard Diviner won initiative, cast confusion, and they all failed their saves and killed each other with confusion.
Then the PC sat back with popcorn
And
as I rolled out the combat encounter against
we didn't
them
participate
against themselves.
until like the very last Spriggan.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized that the Spriggans were super murdery based on some other things, so we decided speaking Aklo was a way to find out what exactly was super murdery and probably unredeemable.
Well, I mean, it was basically like the Will-O-Wisp and the Spriggans and like the weird Lovecraftian monsters.
Oh, yeah.
And
Those and fiends and undead.
yeah. Those were pretty much the only things creatures that they killed were like the sort of over-the-top evil.
And arguably, you didn't kill undead, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Destroyed.
Sure.
Defeated.
So parents' family came and they decided that the dwarven mine and ruins is where they were gonna hang out. Also, some of the Bloodstone Swords, which are a famous mercenary group from the River Kingdoms, showed up and decided to join in with our patrols, which were our general's only forces were just small guard patrols. We did not actually have an army.
I wanted to give the player of the general because the group as a whole was very pacifistic and he didn't really have that much of an army to play with. I wanted to give him more soldiers to command, but that was also interesting from a role playing perspective because the character is very much a person who is thrust into this position of being a general by virtue of being the PC fighter, but not by virtue of actually being someone who wants to lead people. So having this giant group of mercenaries that come up and want to join his forces, and he has to like suddenly pretend to be this image that the people have constructed of him was rather interesting.
Everyone talked about him as a brave general, and he was not necessarily brave. Roll for comment says super murdery as opposed to just regularly murdery for the Spriggans. Yes, we only found out later that they were even worse when we were doing some stuff with the centaurs.
Yep.
So apparently in Gazran there was a drought, but also a craze for stumblefish, which are a type of fish from I think
Lake Silverstep.
Lakes. No, wait, those were the eels.
Oh, wait, those were the eels,
Stumblefish
right?
were from Stumble Crossing. That was one of the areas that we had that was close to the Staglords Fort.
That's right.
Also, that's when we got that Greater Rod of Clickham we talked about last time that was, like, so ridiculously valuable, but Linda made a rolling program that would be very unlikely to roll something like that. So,
but it rolled it, so...
It became a major plot point in the kingdom where we helped the merchant safely auction it off for a cut of the profits, and we wound up getting people coming from around the world trying to get the rod of Quicken, and we wound up selling it to a character Linda made up, an eccentric vizier for the Padishah Emperor of Kalesh.
Oh, yeah! The guy who always identified magic items by licking them.
Yes, he used taste as part of identifying magic items, but it seemed like his ability was like close to Analyze Dwemer as long as he could taste your item. Very unclear.
Well, part of this just came from me thinking about how much fun people had with Devoma, the ooze quartermaster, the ooze harbor master who inspected magic.
Not harbor master. The harbor master was Talisi,
the inspector, the one who checked the magic.
Inspector.
The port inspector. That's what.
Yes.
That's the
Customs. He is the head of customs.
Yeah, well, people liked how the ooze just like licked things and identified them.
Oh,
and
is
some of
that
it-
originally why you had him lick the rod?
I mean, it was just funny because like you're in this formal meeting and you like hand him
And he was
and you hand him
arguably
like a magic weapon or whatever, and then he like is just like licks it and he's like, oh yes, and he is actually accurately identifying.
he was
things.
arguably the most powerful person who came in person, just because the Padishah Empire is so strong that even their little satrapy Kadira is a major power player.
Yeah.
This is also when we opened our first cathedral, which was a pantheistic cathedral of...
Wasn't it like a cathedral of everyone except Norgorber and Ravagog and Urgatho or something like that?
It was something similar to that. I think it may have just had all non-evil deities.
Yeah, it might have been that.
Also, it looks like our general, Al, our Marshal Perrin, and my familiar, our diplomat, Tiali, went to the River Kingdom of Taimon because of something that Linda added that wasn't on the calendar, but that might be useful. I think you added this, right?
I think so.
Little Taimon, which was an archaeological site that used to be from the time back when the original Taimon, who actually, if you've read Guide to the River Kingdoms, is still around using Reincarnate, but the original Taimon that we knew about had controlled all the way up to the Stolen Lands back when that kingdom had started. So we had a place called Little Taimon that we were excavating, and we found like an arbiter, inevitable Aeon that was in there, and we found a ring that was of House Taimon, and so we brought it to Taimon.
Mark's character wasn't there for that, but that was a that one was a nice little mission. They had a chance to. Especially because Al was there, Al was interested in participating in Taimon's gladiatorial combat, so they had sort of a combat festival that was dedicated to the return of the ring, and Al did pretty well in that.
Yep.
Laura says, "How did you all feel when the rod was revealed to you?"
Well, it was a pretty amazing greater rod. And it was worth a lot of money to our kingdom. It really increased our economy to have hundreds of thousands of gold pieces added on. Also, as Possible Couch mentions, some people really empathize with oozes.
I think it's part of the Dragon Quest series uses slimes as a mascot, particularly metal slimes.
Wasn't there a recent anime about someone who got reincarnated as a slime or something?
If you would say, wasn't there a recent anime about, and then blank, I would believe you.
Yeah, but I feel like when my
No,
little
that feels
brother
right.
gave his, like, here are the animes that are around.
Yeah, no, I think there actually was. But
He likes to mention which ones are
fantastically
good
creative.
in every season, even though he knows I don't watch anime with subtitles because I can't do something else at the same time.
Author Stell says that that time I got reincarnated as a slime is awesome.
Okay, so there is a show that is about getting reincarnated.
Oh
as
my
a
god.
slime.
They have no mouth, yet they must... How do you actually pronounce that? Ooh?
Ooh.
I mean, like, it's the emoji, yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, yeah.
Ular Warlord said he would take a greater rod of Main Magic Quicken over Sun Orchid Elixir Dose.
They are rather powerful.
Alright, it looks like at least 2 people wanted to tell us it was the time I got reincarnated as a slime, but Thursdale typed it a lot faster than Alex.
That's okay.
Alright.
Alright.
So, whether or not
So anyway,
the
after
Grand Vizier of Padishah Empire was a reincarnated slime, probably not.
I did not intend for him to be. It was just kind of okay. There was a giant drought. So and I remember then that Perrin was trying to address that with weather control magic, and then that was a that was a big side quest there.
The founding festival, so because Desnus was the month that we founded
Yeah.
the kingdom. Oh right, I remember the case of Victoria and Richard.
Yeah, there was a complicated custody case, and they made the druid Perrin resolve it. Because he was the warden, and it was really messy, and people couldn't figure it out.
He is the marshal.
Or he was the marshal. Right, he's the...
I think we also let other people resolve it because it would have, if Perrin had... This was something that happened in the capital.
He took it to the PCs.
Yeah, because
if he
had to decide on his own, he could have gotten blamed by his own community. Because
yeah.
the thing about it was that there was a very irascibly guy who was from out in the farms, and he'd come to the city
Yeah. He. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Hmm?
Go ahead.
Hmm? You made some kind of counterindication. What do you want to say?
Oh no, it's cool.
What?
I just don't remember. There was at least one plot that got a little weird that I'm not sure I want to talk about on here. But I didn't remember. I don't think it was that one. Never mind. Go ahead.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so he came to the city, and he had a kid with one of the sort of Callistrian free-spirited people who were there.
Oh right, this was this one.
Yeah, which one did you think it was?
I don't want to go into it.
Okay. And so, however, he never really intended to like stay in the cities. He was just kind of doing things for a little bit, maybe a little bit like those walkabouts or what is the name of the term for when people from the Amish community go out into the outside world and then come back? Yeah, the Rumspringer. Yeah. He was seeming to be doing something kind of like that. He didn't describe it exactly, but the point of the matter was that he and his parents and family were really wanted the child to be raised in the Erastal community with Erastal values. Mm-hmm. And the mother basically said, you have no rights towards this child. You basically just knocked me up, and now you're trying to take my child away for no reason to Erastal. You're also a hypocrite because you don't follow the ways of Erastal. And, yeah, you can come visit if you want to come to the city. That's it. That's the most you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So that's what it was. And basically, Perrin was a druid of Erastal, but he also had a lot of sympathy towards the mother in this case, and he did not want to be the one who made the decision either way, because if he decided for the Erastal person, everyone would think he was biased for the Erastal person. Mm-hmm. If he decided for the non-Erastal person, all his Erastal people would get angry.
Yes.
That he wasn't biased towards them.
Yes.
So he was the one who first got wind of it because the Erastal person came to him to try to get a biased ruling.
Yes.
But he said, this is not something I can decide on my own. This is not a martial thing about, like, law and order in this community or a community problem. This is something that would have to be decided by the council. Because we had a council of all the kingdom leaders. If the book Kingmaker said you are a kingdom leader, you get a vote.
Yes.
And then
that vote includes NPCs.
Yes, except Edward the King, because we're a monarchy and courts are for kings, so theoretically Edward could do anything that he wanted, but he always followed the council.
Yeah. So basically,
he didn't vote.
Yeah, but basically Mark's character only ever came in if a tie break was needed, and he really didn't like tie breaking, so he would like try to keep people talking about stuff, so there wasn't a tie break, so he didn't actually have to decide anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Part of it was that, like, I knew I got to play the king, but I wanted other people to get to make the decisions, because I thought it would be, like, not cool if, as the king, that also meant I made decisions, so I intentionally made the character very indecisive in some ways, and very respecting of the fact that Lollipop had, like, 30 intelligence, and Perrin had like 30 wisdom, and Edward knew he was charismatic, but he could never match those.
So there were certainly sometimes
when he was like, be my intelligence and my wisdom.
Yeah, there were sometimes he didn't take it to the full council, but he would just, like, if it was a wisdom-based thing, go ask the druid's player and then have that be the decision. Or if it's an int-based thing, go ask the wizard and have that be the decision. Yeah.
Oh, is this when we were building the Lollipop Guild?
Yes. The Mages Institute of Tysana, also known as the Lollipop Guild.
Was the Lollipop Guild different because it was a guild and not the academy? I can't remember. I know that the Mages Institute of Tysana was called that because first of all it was in Tysana, and second of all that MIT was the...
It's like where we
were playing, but it's also the acronym of Mages Institute of Tysana.
Yes. And we wanted it to match our school. So, yeah. I don't remember where that I think he may have had a side guild that was but the point is that he had an organization that was called the Lollipop Guild, and we played the Lollipop Guild song over and over again.
Yep. Oh, they represent the Lollipop Guild.
They wish to welcome you. All right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was when Kairos joined Owl's patrols too, really trying to continue giving the. That was the.
To give the general some more people.
Give the general more
Kairos
people.
was,
Yeah.
like the trying to redeem himself bandit from the Stag Lords group.
Yeah. And with the continuing drought, there ended up being a giant wildfire. So the Perrin, the druid, and Thenui, the nymph from Silverstep, went because they were both druids. Went out to a wildfire, and which had been the site of some Taldan archaeologists who were excavating some.
I think it was Little Paimon.
Yeah, excavating some sites. I believe this was some more stuff. Yeah, you're right. That wasn't Little Paimon because I remember the Arbiter was there.
Right.
At the time that they were putting out the fire. But I wanted some event that was based on the drought that wasn't... Because normally with the drought you think, like, okay, issues with food and water, but because of the druid and the plant growth, the good stockpiling, the fact that they were on a lake, they were fairly good with that. So I was thinking, well, what else might there be that might be an isolated and contained incident that's something that they can directly address? And so that's when I put in the wildfire at the archaeology site.
And wildfires are fast and they're very dangerous. Just the heat pressing in front of the fire is more dangerous than the actual flames.
And if you might wonder, like, well, how did they get to that archaeology site? They probably weren't anywhere near it. Well, by this time you guys had your sending relay, I believe, where like every site had a scroll of sending that they could use to.
We had sending relay
to pop back to,
and we also had our garden of very specific plant species.
Yes.
What we did was we
the garden of very specific plant species.
A very specific plant species that was the most highly guarded area in the kingdom, including the palace. I think we had it by then, but I'm not sure. It was, we had exotic species from Tian Sha, and just like, Perrin would just find out, like, every species or subspecies of oak that was like, okay, this is a different oak.
Yes.
Because, with transport via plants, it's very difficult to find the exact species you want to go to if it's very far away from where you are. The problem, and the reason why it was so heavily guarded, is that anyone who wanted to, like, I don't know, like, attack Cheliax from Minkai or something would have to go into like a Minkaian tree. It's like, well, what's the closest to this Minkaian Sakura tree?
Yeah.
It's a Cheliax. Well, there's something like a few kingdoms away in this random river kingdom that has it. Yeah. So like anybody who was transporting via plants to get to even just anywhere vaguely near there would find that our place was the closest plant.
Your transport via plants arboretum.
Yep. Oh, thanks for subscribing. Healer Zero. I get it. It has a zero with a zero as a zero.
Oh yeah. Hi. And yes,
geeks.
we are indeed geeks.
Hi, Healer Zero.
But it makes for some really amazing and creative stuff in the game. Like I would not have thought of the transport via plants worldwide network arboretum.
It's very important. I think a lot of people underestimate the variance in species and just assume you can always go wherever you want from plant species, but we did not.
And you also planted some of those species that would normally be really far off in weird places that were then protected, so you could use those as essentially teleport anchors to fast travel to certain places.
That's true. We also eventually, I think, had a teleport circle to our flying city, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, you don't have a flying city yet.
No flying city? Oh, no.
Not yet.
But then the drought lifted.
Yep. I'd finished all the plot-related stuff for that, so there was no reason to keep that around.
So we had Tysana and Honeymead as like our only two cities up to this point. But it looks like in the equivalent of July, Erastus, we founded our third city, Brandywine.
Yes, they did keep naming all of their cities after various alcoholic beverages.
That's true. Even though like Tristan was somewhat being phased out as a player character, he was still the counselor, and when we asked him what the people said they wanted the name to be, he would always give like some kind of Caden name.
Yup.
That teaches us for believing that someone chaotic was actually taking it. Oh, thanks for subscribing, Steven.
Oh yeah, transfer via plants with feather token trees. That must be really interesting, because you're going to...
You know you're going, like, only to another person's feather token tree.
Yeah.
But it's probably used all across the land, so... Also, you can use your own feather token trees to make sure that it's a relay of those feather tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. So, let's see. Yeah, we founded Brandywine.
And that's when you went to the Outlaw Council for the first
We
time.
did.
So the AP itself doesn't. The AP itself doesn't assume that you go to the Outlaw Council, the meeting of, which is an annual meeting of rulers in Daggermark, and it's a little bit weird because even like the ruler of Liberthane, who's basically a guy from Galt who brought together less than 100 people and has them
Into
living in
a
a fort, and like even he gets to go to the Outlaw Council. So like,
And
why
we
wouldn't
know
you
that they have to allow him to go there because every year he comes there, he says, "We must conquer Galt," and they all just are like, "Ugh." So if there was any way to claim that you're too small at 100 people in a fort,
Yeah.
so you can't come, they would have definitely claimed that with that guy.
Yeah. So I figured, well, they have to be able to go. So.
But I know that not a lot of GMs necessarily had people go in the first year. Like when Lisa was running her game, our CEO ran Kingmaker. They didn't go until like post game. So, but I think that it made sense for our group to go, given that Liberthane was going.
And I think that, and it was good too because it gave you a chance to see some of those other leaders who featured more prominently later on. It gave you a chance to see Drelev from Fort Drelev, to see Irvetti from Pytax. You knew that he'd been messing with your stuff.
Right, but
this
we hadn't met him.
This is the first time that you actually got to meet him, and you got to see those big personalities and interact with them. And I think even by the first year, you guys were large enough that you were allowed to sit at the big kids' table, so to speak. They had two different rings, they had a sort of like an inner table and an outer ring, so that the people who ruled kingdoms of some substance would be in the center, and the people who ruled like tiny like Liberthanes would not.
I think we were the second smallest of the big kids table after. The smallest was Uringen, and the reason we got to be in it was that Linda decided Uringen probably counted because they did a lot of important things, but they were pretty small.
Yeah.
So I think Uringen is where she drew the line for the big kids table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we met a lot of River Kingdom's leaders. I feel like was the first year the one where there were random assassins that were not from the Assassin's Guild that we later found out were from Razmir, or was that the second year?
I think that was the second year that there were random assassins from Razmir, and then you helped stop an assassination plot against the Outlaw Council.
The first year we figured out that the people from Cordelon were like really hiding something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read Guide to the River Kingdoms, apparently there was like a weird, crazy slavery situation going on there.
So
which is completely legal in the River Kingdoms.
Yes, you can't. Slavery is not legal in the River Kingdoms, so they decided that they were going to go to Cordelon and enforce the River Freedoms and break up the slavery ring. And so that is what they did.
But we did it in like the most outrageous way possible.
Oh my god.
We basically convinced the slavers that there was like a disease called owlbear-dander that causes you to go mad and like kill your allies.
Didn't you bring Albert the Lost on this mission?
I think we used him or an illusion as a prop.
Yeah.
We had like a disguised Edward, like seeding the rumors of Owlbear-dander. We used like a confusion spell. We like brought them to a fake like.
Wait, no, didn't you use Moonstruck because it also gives people
claws? Moonstruck because it gave them claws.
Yeah.
Yes, Perrin cast Moonstruck on one person. We brought them to like a fake owlbear idol in the middle of the woods that like we had constructed that was like causing the owlbear-dander, and like I was like pretending to be like this weird mystic who had uncovered it, and then someone got Moonstruck, and all the bandits were like, "Crap, this owlbear-dander is gonna like take over this whole place," and we Scooby-Dooed them out of Cordelon basically.
Yep. I mean, when you have a group with high bluff, it can be amazing, because they can come up with some really ridiculous things.
And in Pathfinder 1st Edition, you could easily have, especially I was using Versatile Performance, it was on my Perform.
Yeah.
You could easily have a buff and disguise that is just higher than people's perception can get.
Yep.
Assuming that, as our group did, you are banning acute senses, which adds plus 30 to perception.
Yes.
If you have that, then, of course, that is the highest. But otherwise, with glibness, I was in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So
while you were,
what else was going on?
While you were gone, the substitute leaders was basically while the PCs were at the Outlaw Council. I did a one shot of where each of the PCs took the role of a secondary character. So these were basically the other kingdom leaders. So some of the PCs who had cohorts took the role of their cohorts. Other people took other kingdom leaders, things like that.
We mentioned this before. We didn't give any details, but we mentioned the idea of doing this in one of the episodes. I can't remember which.
I don't remember which, but yeah.
This is the one that we talked about, and I definitely have my cohort by then. So
yeah.
I will mention her because she became the new spy master after we lost Med to an assassination. From Razmir, actually.
Yeah.
Med was dealing with weird stuff with Razmiran. But Rihanna was from Maivon, and she was an Aldori sword lord in training who, when I went to Maivon to try to convince them to ally with us, basically she decided that she would have more fun in Sangria than dealing with the other stuff in Maivon. And that she wanted to come back when she was strong enough to duel for a really high position, but that she wasn't giving much there. So she was a monk / Aldori duelist fighter with steel net and crane style, so that she took a -1 or 0 to attack rolls for fighting defense.
She got Snake eventually too.
Yeah, for fighting defensively, it had like a +6 or something AC from fighting defensively. Also, with Snake, she could punish you if you dared to attack her.
Yep.
That was very relevant to her ability to fight that mythic will-o-wisp that we've talked about before a few times. So there was her, a lot of cohorts.
She generally pretended to be like a servant or a consort or something else like that of Edward, but she basically just slept in his room and...
She was a bodyguard.
She was a bodyguard.
We had some thoughts of assassination attempts, so she pretended to be a consort who was not, but was actually a bodyguard. And she had 2 identities, one of which was seeming to be a consort, and the other of which was she was starting like a sword academy. And she was basically a vigilante in that way, but we didn't have that class yet. Also, I remember now, Alex hadn't switched to Xena yet, because he played Xena as a backup character in this, and that's when
that's right.
That's when he decided that he wanted to play Xena instead of Tristan.
That's right. So yeah, I gave everybody a secondary character that they could play for this, and they... How do I remember? Do I have notes? Yes, I do. But I mean, the notes say things like, substitute leaders clear out a ship filled with blank. Then it says the things that we're about to get into, and that's the rest of it is coming from memory.
Yep.
So then it was a ship full of ghoul dogs and symbols of the hag. There was basically this creepy ass ghost ship that floated into port, and the kingdom leaders were gone, and because they were at the outlaw council, calling them to leave the council was not necessarily going to be the best thing. Because the PCs were so extremely vigilant, I mean, this was kind of a cycle, right? That anytime the PCs were out doing something else, I always had something else happen because there were so many ideas that I had that could only happen if they were out. But that meant that they realized that anytime they were out, like, something bad might happen. And so they were more afraid to be out. And so it was kind of fun. But yeah, so then they...
So a ship filled with ghoul dogs attacked. It was actually sent by, if you guys know from Guide to River Kingdoms, there's this vague mention of like a hag lich who is really screwing up Maivon. And I can't remember her name, but she was like previously a hag that was screwing up Maivon, but then she became a hag lich. And so she sent...
I think she may be in the back matter of one of the Kingmaker volumes, actually. But I can't remember. She was in one of the books.
Yeah, she sent... Oh, maybe back matter of Kingmaker. She sent this ship of ghoul dogs that were very specifically, they had like wiped out some town of Maivon on the border and or something like that.
Maybe she's in the Undead book that has like the
Undead not revisited,
Unleashed.
But Unleashed.
I think she may have been in that, one of the liches in that.
Oh, one of the liches in the sidebar in Undead.
Maybe
Unleashed.
I don't remember exactly where she came from.
She's in some book.
Yeah,
and she's an official Golarian enemy. But
I did a lot of research about basically anything that had been said about the Stolen Lands or any of the surrounding areas and these plot hooks.
So we managed to defeat those, and we found out that it had caused major problems back in Maivon. And for now, that was the only thing that we had to deal with that hag.
Yeah.
She was mostly on the run and doing weird things to Maivon because there was like some family in Maivon she was trying to wipe out.
Yeah.
So
she had her own complicated plots, not all of which intersected with the PCs.
Killed those ghoul dogs. They had done what she really wanted them to do first. She was just hoping they would kill more people just for funsies.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see.
Then people had a giant party. I don't know why I bothered to say that because you were having giant parties.
It must have been a big party that they held.
Oh, party for the leaders. That's right. That was when your kingdom decided that they were going to get together and throw a party for you guys in particular. Because
they thought we were so awesome. And we hadn't rolled a natural 1 when embezzling from them.
Yay!
Yay! And we embezzled with only kindness in our heart. Like, we embezzled for things like Anti-Alex, the Staff of Life that we used to resurrect people for free. That embezzlement was worth it.
Yes.
Anything we could have spent those building points for would be, I don't think people would have liked as much as having their Uncle Bob come back from the dead.
Yep.
Alright.
Oh yeah, this is when you went to explore the Desna marked areas. We talked about this in the last episode where they used commune to Desna on every hex to ask if there was something interesting. And interesting was what I thought would be interesting to Desna. So it had like actual sites of interest and for the PCs to be interested in. And it also just had like beautiful vistas and interesting and places with interesting flowers or things like that. And it did not just have a random pile of treasure in the middle of nowhere.
So the reason it took a whole year and we didn't get to part 3 is we were mostly exploring that Lost Larn area we talked about last time that's south of the Nomad Heights.
Yeah.
But we had been a little spooked by the permit no travel here that was in the eastern Nomad Heights, so we had left them alone for a little bit.
Yeah.
But we did eventually start exploring them. We found a bunch of stuff. For instance,
and I don't think you were. Yeah, that's right.
For instance, the Spriggan tribe, Linda moved them from. I've heard that initially you find them in like the ghosted out ruins of
Lost Larn.
Of
Varnhold, yeah. But I figured the way you guys were going that you weren't going to do that anyway, and also that was a lot of encounters that were very easy for you guys, and based on the way you fought, that I thought that would be pretty tedious. So I decided to rewind time a little bit from that and think about, okay, where might they have been before they invaded? And I gave them their own base of operations.
But they still had the captured
I'm just sort of re-say that because
right.
I decided to rewind time a bit, and I was thinking about where would they have been before they attacked Varnhold, before they settled in.
Right, and they still had the captured centaur stuff that we needed to get, which we didn't know yet at the time, but we had got from the Spriggans.
Yeah, they had been seriously harassing the local centaurs and just generally being awful and killing people for no real reason, other than just being territorial and sadistic. So yeah, I mean, the thing is that with the group that I had that was so eager to make friends with everybody, sometimes I just needed to have some thoroughly punchable evil creatures, so that the people who were more interested in the knockdown, drag out combat or whatever would have that.
Speaking of evil outsiders and evil creatures, we also did find that ancient elven portal to the ethereal plane.
Oh yeah.
And we saved an ether spider named Zamas from Zil, or
yes.
Ether, whatever they're called, Marauders, or whatever their other name is that isn't Zell.
Yeah.
The egg implanting lawful evil outsiders from the ethereal plane.
Yeah.
And that's how we got our ethereal spy.
And then yes, exactly. I mean, having a spy that can go on the ethereal plane to watch your enemies for you is very useful. And that's when they got that.
Yep.
And they definitely did send the phase spider to go pre-investigate locations several times for them.
I believe that Med, after finding out how useful, but there were limitations, also trains the mouse to read lips because of the fact that you can't hear what they're saying on the ethereal plane.
So you may have noticed we haven't talked about Med as much as some of the other characters. That's because Med's player was
gone by now.
Med's player was gone by now, and also even when Med's player was there, his attendance was fairly intermittent, and he wasn't necessarily as actively plugged into the things that were going on. So there weren't as many
right.
There weren't as many side things, and the things that were there was a lot more of the types of things that happen in side chats or whatever, where the character goes off on missions, and not things that the PCs were aware of up until this point. So
they
I think
were
maybe,
secrets, and
we can talk about that.
This is the official record.
This is the official
that
record
Linda put up for everyone in the campaign.
So when Med actually died, which happens pretty soon, then the PCs found a giant record that told them a lot more about what Med had been up to.
The funny thing is, we didn't find any of that stuff for a little while because Med had so many countermeasures, it was gone or hidden for so much.
Yeah.
That it took a while. We eventually found out because Med had been using Rihanna for certain components.
Yeah.
And those stopped coming. And so we were able to finally put all our divinations into it and chase down all of Med's secrets, which we just didn't feel like doing because Med was working for us, and that's when we found out Med was actually dead.
Yes.
But what else did we find in the Nomad area?
That was when you learned more about the seal. That was when you learned about Vortikai as a sealed ancient evil from Stygeria prophets, and because there was this really cool monster in the back, the Stygeria, which were these sort of cyclops, like mysterious cyclops diviners, but they didn't actually show up in the adventure. So I decided to put them in a remote mountain hex and have the PCs come across them as sort of these morally ambiguous ancient seer and mysterious ancient seer figures that could give the PCs some useful information, but also might lead them astray if they listen too closely.
Right, and the Nomad Centaurs had their own legends of what was going on that they gained from Mother Moon.
Yeah, so the PCs met the Nomad Centaurs before all of the mess went down in Part 3 at this point. And they started to do some initial poking at Lost Larn at this stage as well. But in the next month, Rovo was when Med was assassinated. It took them a while to figure things out after that, like Mark said. But then they found this giant treasure trove of notes about what Med had been up to, which I know I have in here somewhere.
Eventually. We...
might be a little
also,
tough
that's when
the
character Sigma was introduced, who was a even more mysterious character than Med, who seemed to be in favor of our kingdom, but that we never really trusted quite as much as Med because we did not know Sigma's true identity or true loyalties, but seemed to be very anti-Sertova and pro-us.
It took a long time before you actually figured out what Sigma was up to.
That's true.
Yeah,
we did eventually figure out that we should have trusted Sigma more, but I was very suspicious of Sigma.
Well, Sigma was a close ally of Med, who had been involved in a lot of her plots.
Yep. Sigma was basically the one who was in Brevoid doing things, where Med was in our kingdom, and they were corresponding back and forth. Mm-hmm. They were sort of their own network, and we just didn't know it.
It's an NPC that only that one player even knew existed.
And when Sigma showed up, since we didn't get an introduction from Med, we did have notes from Med, but Med's notes did mention Sigma, but Med is paranoid of everyone.
Yes.
And did mention, trying to figure out more about Sigma, so we were suspicious of Sigma for a while. Mm-hmm. But Sigma seemed very emotionless, but also very dedicated to, for some reason, to our kingdom and being against the Sertova.
Yeah.
We would find out later on why.
Yeah, you didn't. I don't know if these notes are going to say why you figured that out later, but.
And in October /Lamestadt, that's when the silver eel fishing was a thing.
That's right. That was some more fishing, and the trolls moved into the gem mines at that phase.
Yep, they decided they wanted to work in the gem mines. We did not send them to forced labor in the gem mines. They were working and being paid for doing labor in the gem mines, and they had very high con and strength, so they were good at doing certain tasks.
Yep. Yeah, I think the idea was that if you worked in the gem mines, that you got a certain cut of the gems that you got, and so it was actually one of the most lucrative jobs, and so they wanted that.
And it was right next to their village.
And it was right next to their village. Yeah. Then there was Then, because you were going all over the place, you went to Uringen, because...
You solved their Mother Mithra problem.
Yeah, you had you heard that Uringen was having a crisis, because the representatives from Uringen came to you quietly because they didn't want the whole Outlaw Council knowing, but basically the rumors about the PCs, they had heard rumors about that that the PCs may have been helping other people. It wasn't exactly clear what had happened in Cordelon, but they knew that, like, maybe the PCs might have been involved somehow, and that the PCs generally had a reputation for being, like, really good and trustworthy. So they went to the PCs and asked for help.
Plus, we had a suspicion that Mather Nithra was formed from a shard of Nyrisa in Linda's continuity, where shards of Nyrisa were around.
Yeah, shards of Nyrisa were basically, in my continuity, fragments of Nyrisa's memory and personality, and there were 8 of those that were scattered throughout the greater Stolen Lands, River Kingdoms area. And I don't know exactly when you learned this. I don't think you knew this yet, but that it would be that the process of being able to redeem Nyrisa and restore her spirit would require you to gather all of the scattered shards and perform a ritual.
There were 8 shards that were not Briar and Briar.
And Briar. So there were 9 shards, 3 threes. Yeah. So I think you knew at this point that there was some aspect of Nyrisa that was around, and that you would want to try to collect it to figure out what was going on with the strange ancient fae. You didn't yet know exactly, like, what this would be useful for.
And so Mather Nithra is a character from Guide to the River Kingdoms in Uringen, who's a corrupted evil Greek who is corrupting the fae in the area. So we were able to uncorrupt Mather Nithra by extracting the fragment of Nyrisa. That's when the sort of Uringen, sort of part of it comes unstuck every once in a while. And after we had dealt with the Mather Nithra stuff, we discovered that the unstuckness in Linda's continuity to be different than the unstuckness in the 6 Seconds to Midnight adventure for Pathfinder Society came from a weird connection to the Harrow realm that was created by one of the founders, who was Varisian, who had sort of built the clock tower, helped to build the clock tower with the Ulfin wizard who built it. And so we wound up going to and inserting the harrowing here.
Yes. So
the people who had disappeared in Uringen when it became unstuck were the ones who had been taken by the villain of the harrowing. And we didn't say there would be spoilers for the harrowing, so I won't say more about the harrowing.
So insert the harrowing module here.
Yep.
And there was also, the professor from Kithronian Academy came to Taisana.
That's right, who's my professor from... So Edward, the reason he wasn't killed, if you'll remember from last time, was he was all around traveling to different countries, and they kind of lost track of him because he wasn't very important. And one of the places he studied was the Kithronian Academy at Taldor, because that's one of the top bard schools anywhere. So, my bard professor from Taldor showed up in Taisana. Now, of course, as you guys may know, the Kithronian Academy, a lot of their top people may also be spies from Lion Blade.
Lion Blades?
And Professor Pendrode, probably, definitely a Lion Blade.
He was a Lion Blade.
Okay.
We're not playing that campaign anymore. I'm just going to tell you he was totally a Lion Blade.
We kind of thought he was.
Yeah, he totally was a Lion Blade. He totally was spying on you guys.
Also, I feel like we got a Harrow deck of many things for defeating the Harrow.
Yeah, you did, because there wasn't enough silly and off the wall stuff happening in this campaign already.
So wasn't.
So I decided to throw a deck of many things into the mix. So this is where they got their deck of many things. So a few of the highlights of things that happened in this. Rasa Ladara, Lollipop's cohort, just kept drawing absolutely awful things. She almost died to poison and other stuff.
It was bad because she finally Lollipop finally decided that instead of being aloof to her, that he liked Rasa, because she had a crush on Lollipop, but he kind of was just aloof and was he was fine with her being his cohort. So he got her gift, which almost killed her with fatal poison.
Yes.
Then after that,
because the gift was a magnificent cloak that he had gotten from the Harrow deck, and it was totally what's that cloak with the terrible poison on it?
Yeah, the poison cloak.
It was totally a poison cloak. He failed to identify it.
Yep. He got a cursed item, and then after that became Lollipop's wish, the one that we talked about Lollipop getting his comeuppance for his arrogant elfishness. For a long, long time.
So he got the marriage, which is the one where a genie princess proposes to you, and so they're invited to this grand palace, and all these things go on, and the genie princess proposes to him and things like that, and he doesn't reject her because they don't really know each other and this is moving too fast or whatever. He rejects her because she's not an elf.
Yep.
So,
He was trying to be polite about it. He's like, you're beautiful and smart and very interesting, but I'm only interested in other elves.
Or the way that I put it in this description, rejects a genie princess because her ears aren't pointy enough.
Yes.
Just because you mentioned Professor Carrot, what class do you think fits the librarian concept other than wizard?
Bard. Bard is an Enigma Muse Bard is a really great librarian, I think.
Yeah.
Because especially if they know a lot of weird stuff from the library.
So genies may not be able to directly use wishes, but a genie princess would have some humans on hand that would be able to perform the task of making the wish. And so she set things up with a very simple wish that the wish was that Lollipop would become a human.
Yep. So because of his arrogance, he became a human.
And that the wish would only be undone when he finally realized that elves are not actually superior to humans.
That's right. Which he refused to do.
Yes.
So he used to have a dexterity belt.
Yes.
A +2 dexterity belt. So he had a con belt. My bad, because he had a penalty to con because of being an elf.
Yeah.
He dropped that and bought a dex belt so that he would lose 2 con and gain 2 dex to cancel out the fact that being a human, he lost 2 dex and gained 2 con.
He took spell penetration as his extra human feat so that he would
get a +2.
He'd get a +2 to get
overcome SR, which elves get.
Yes.
And so he tried to be as elfy as possible with the things he got for being a human.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Healers is in grad school to be a librarian. That's awesome.
Nice. So yeah, at this point, this didn't quite happen yet because even more terrible stuff happened to Rasa before that. But when Rasa did come back and everything was okay again, he confided in her that like he'd had this terrible thing happen to him. His ears now were like illusory he had illusions and prosthetics.
Yeah, he pretended to still be an elf.
He was actually human. And he was so sorry and things like that, but he was interested in her and things like that, and then she's like, I'm sorry, Lollipop, but it's like, I'm sorry, Sabathiel, but I'm only interested in elves. And then he was like, no.
But he couldn't say that quite yet because due to yet another terrible card that she drew, she was kidnapped into the city of Brass by Ifrits on the way to go into the Genie Palace with everybody else.
So this is when we ran. About half of Part 5 of Legacy of Fire.
That sure is true. Before Part 3 of Kingmaker, might be add.
Before Part 3 of Kingmaker. They were a little over level for Part 3 of Kingmaker at this point.
There were some issues. So, quote Castruccio Iravetti and his lackeys rescue her because we couldn't actually sneak into getting into the city because of the fact that it was too well guarded. We sneaked into the prison, but we need to get into the city legit. So to do that, I registered as Castruccio Iravetti.
Yes.
Just figuring that if anyone was able to connect the bad stuff, illegal stuff that I did, that they would blame it on Iravetti and go get mad at him.
Yes.
So Castruccio Iravetti and his lackeys came into the city, and we wound up doing some weird shenanigans where basically what we did was we went into an extra-dimensional space, then Perrin wall-shaped into an elemental while holding it and melded into his body. Then he earth-glided into somewhere, and then sent us out, although he didn't realize the prison prevented earth-gliding out.
Yes.
We managed to save Rasa, but we also found, just because it's in Legacy of Fire, that there's a Merid who was captured there. Mm-hmm. And that's when we made what could have been one of the biggest mistakes that we ever made if Pathfinder 1st Edition did not allow for major alpha strikes. So, this genie was like, oh no, someone has my special mirror thing and we needed to save me, to free me from here. And we were like, we're not going to let someone stay in slavery, even a random genie who we've never met. And she's like, oh, we'll have to find it. It's like this whole thing, because it's part of the adventure path, if you guys know. I'm not going to do much except talk about the genie and this one thing. So, we're like, oh, but here's an idea. You can grant wishes. We'll wish for transport travelers to just transport the holder of the mirror here, and then we'll gank him.
The holder of the mirror... Now I said that they were over leveled, but they weren't. Wish the boss of part 5 of an adventure path to themselves over leveled. And the boss, and I rolled for, we rolled against the defense of the boss and the will save and things like that, and it actually...
Yeah, it should have failed,
It should have failed. But the boss rolled like a 3 or something.
SR and will save, the transport traveler should just not have worked at all. But we got really lucky or unlucky,
yes.
And wound up encountering like one of the highest CR things in the bestiary.
Yes.
Not the Terras, but we won't say exactly what it is in case you play.
Yep.
For some reason, part 5 of Legacy
that
of Fire.
was. I'll just say that was definitely a beyond epic encounter for you guys that you just wished in, and that it's just like roaring at you guys.
The only reason we won was because he didn't get a turn. And that happened because we got a surprise round because you correctly counterindicated that we knew that someone was coming and that he was not expected to be wish transport traveler into that spot. And it worked even though we were in a prison that prevented extra dimensional travel because transport traveler says it ignores all all of the other things that stop travel. So, but we were ready. We pegged him with a limited wish to give him penalty on his next saving throw, which is like, according to limited wish, is like a -7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we had prepared 3 different saving throws depending on what came, and it turned out reflex was good.
Yep.
So we used a dazing spell, a dazing ball lightning that dazed him for 4 rounds.
And then you won.
And by the way, it's like usually in PF1, once someone is dazed for 4 rounds, you actually kill them like in 2 of those 4 rounds because you don't have to do anything defense, you just attack. It took us nearly all of those 4 rounds just to kill him. He was so overpowered compared to us. But we did.
Oh my god, you guys.
We got an artifact from Legacy of Fire by accident.
Yep. So far we've thrown in the harrowing and part 5 of Legacy of Fire. And, and this is when the this is when the witch from Irisen came to pick up her, who you sold the Ice Palace to came to pick that up.
That's right.
So that was another wish. There were a lot of wishes going around in Kuthona.
So there was a 17th level wish of Irisen who we didn't sell the Greater Rod of Mana Magic Quicken to, but Linda figured anyone who was willing to pay for the Greater Mana Magic Rod of Quicken probably wanted to use all of the higher level spells from it and could cast 9th level spells.
Yeah.
So we sold her that Ice Palace from part 1.
To ameliorate her anger at not getting the...
There's a really awesome Ice Palace, and she used Wish to wish it over to Irisen.
Yep. They got a lot of money from that.
Yep. She deducted the cost of the Wish from the money she was going to pay us, but it was still an amazing Ice Palace from the first world. Mm-hmm. And that was the end of 4711.
So
that's probably good for today.
I say that is probably good.
So we managed to not do any parts of Kingmaker because this was the part where we really did a lot of Linda's stuff. Once we actually triggered part 3, we sort of very quickly did... It wasn't that fast into part 4, but actually once we got to part 4, we zoomed into part 5 and part 6.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of random stuff, and this is, I mean, when we get to the part where you get the flying city and stuff like that, like, that's not in Kingmaker either.
That's true. It's from Crucible of Chaos.
Yeah, that was when I threw the Crucible of Chaos module in.
Yep. We also did a very, very less similar than all the other ones she threw in, Realm of the Fell Knight Queen, where everything was mythic and much, much higher level.
Yes.
Alright. So, that was part 2 of Linda's Kingmaker. So let's say bye to YouTube and then talk to Twitch for a little bit.
Sounds good.
Bye, YouTube. See you next time.